Welcome to Read Your Comics. I'm looking at Incredible Hulk 358. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Daryl. I'm the host of Read Your Comics. Today I'm continuing the Peter David run. We're looking at this as sort of an Inferno crossover. But before I do that, I want to give a quick shout out to all the viewer support. All your likes, comments, and shares are much appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button. It helps other comic fans find this positive comic content and just generally spread the word of comics. So if you haven't done so, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Let's look at this. I love this cover. Probably one of the best of the Purvis era. I think he excels at these close-ups of the faces. I mentioned that in one of the videos recently, at least on an interior panel. But some of his best covers this far have been these ones that are just a close-up on his face. He does a great job of like doing these like cauliflower ears that are all like swollen up. And I think he does a lot better job on the details of his face. He does these like huge, gigantic teeth. This one has some great texture inside his mouth. I love the way his eyes are like kind of bulging out. This hand, this long, bony hand covering his face and drawing a little bit of green blood out of it. I posted this one on Instagram and somebody said it had like a Bernie Wrightson vibe to it. And I got to admit, this hand, it definitely gives that impression. And I think some of the other finer details of the line work, I could see the Bernie influence in this. It's very much the Jeff Purvis Hulk. I cannot see past that. I do kind of see that Bernie Wrightson influence after it was pointed out to me. So let's jump inside. The last issue started out with panels on the first page before we jumped into the title card page. And I think it starts better when really any comic starts out with almost like a second cover like this. Although I like the perspective of this. It's like down on the street looking up. So, you know, some of the streets, it's kind of almost like looking backwards up over your head, which is certainly an interesting perspective. I don't love all this like negative space that it's made though on this in particular. But we've got this character that we met in the last issue. This was some sort of like mob hitman that had been killed and was more or less in limbo. And the character that we've met called Clute, who is very heavily being implied to be the devil at this point, allowed him to come out as long as with the only string was there was going to be a gray demon that was going to try to prevent him from getting out. And it was really, I guess, probably Clute himself or something that was looking like the Hulk and distorted him from being like a normal person into looking like a ghoul. So that's kind of what he becomes is a ghoul. And it says Inferno 2, Hulk 0. So I guess the Inferno storyline was going on at the same time or within like a month or two of this, and where most of that was all taking place in New York. So a lot of the characters that were based in New York had an Inferno crossover, and I'm wondering if there was some kind of like push for Peter David to have an Inferno crossover, but then maybe they decided not to make it an official one because they didn't brand it as such on the cover, but he already had this like Inferno 2 title going. That's a kind of an interesting, it's a weird change for it to, it's not a crossover, but it's kind of implied that it is a crossover at the same time. So here we see Clute again. He's meeting with Galorian, and he's saying that he's, you know, sent his physical threat off to confront the Hulk. The Hulk is going to I guess it's like a gentleman's club or some sort of burlesque show, I guess, the Ponyland Review. And he's just there kind of drowning his sorrows. In the last issue, he wanted to talk to his boss, Mike Maranghetti, who strangely didn't want to talk to him in that moment. And then he went to go see Marlowe. Galorian had gotten to both of them before the Hulk got there and gave them a vision of Joe Fixit terrorizing him more or less. And while they both came out of the visions realizing like, oh, that was just some kind of weird hallucination, it made them both weary to when they actually saw Joe coming, who was just wanting to talk. But some great panels here too. I love like the shadow on the Hulk's head here. Purvis is pretty good at these profiles, I think, of the Hulk. I like this one where he's slamming the bottle down so hard that it cracks. And he's just kind of, like I said, drowning his sorrows. When the ghoul comes crashing down into this club, he's looking for the Hulk, for the gray demon that was going to prevent him from being normal again. So he's coming looking for revenge for turning him into this creature, right? So everybody runs away. And again, another cool close up of the Hulk right here. I like the facial expression, the kind of like, side mouth open going on. He takes his hat off and is like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Oh, you're coming for me? Well, that's fine. I've been wanting to fight somebody that's going to give me a challenge of some sort. So you picked the wrong day, though, to come because I'm not going to be nice." They just have some corny dialogue here, more or less, and they start to fight. They start to have their throwdown, and the Hulk sees him looking like all scrawny and stuff. He thinks he's just going to whump him, and that be that. He's pretty hideous looking here. I think this is this dated October. It's dated August, so no, it would have come out in the summertime, like or May or so. And then we're gonna have mostly a throwdown for most of this issue. The police come and they're shooting him, but the bullets don't do anything to him. And at this point, Hulk is really just kind of stunned at how much strength the little scrawny dude has. So he goes into him, and all of a sudden he gets cut, and it rips and causes like fire. He doesn't see fire, but like he says, it burns, and it's drawing blood, and the Hulk's definitely not used to that. So he's stunned here as the ghoul is able to lift him up. And I just keep saying that they're having a throwdown. They hit the Liberace Museum. This narration boxes are mostly in the Hulk, and there's some funny stuff coming up soon, but it's pretty much just him being surprised, like of how powerful this guy is and what he's gonna have to do to beat him. Like he gets him, like hits the Liberace piano and uses the strings or the chords in the piano to wrap him up, which would be pretty gross. What it could do to the flesh as well. This is a fun issue. I think it's probably the most fun issue in a little bit, honestly. The last couple issues I've been hard on for being a little slow of developing the story, and Galorian kind of lame. But this one, even though this character looks strange, it's pretty action packed. I mean, you want to see the Hulk getting in these brawls. So I think I appreciated that in this issue. It has a great cover, and it's just kind of a throwdown issue. Again, just more going into the different shops. It's tearing his clothes up. They're wreaking havoc. Now, this is where the dialogue box I thought was interesting. I haven't been ripped up like this since Wolverine. And this is worse. Not just because everything he cuts feels like it's on fire, but at least Wolverine had a rep. This guy's a dweeb. So that's pretty entertaining, I think, as I like the reference to Hulk 340, obviously, when he fought Wolverine and got ripped up. And maybe it's even a little bit of a reference to, well, they didn't really fight, though, when he appeared in the Wolverine issues with Patch. And, I'm not even sure he knew Patch was Wolverine in that. He never really came right out and said it in those issues. But I do appreciate just that they do the reference and the whole joke behind Wolverine had a rep. Who is this guy? And they land in a wet and wild water park. Here's again the sign makers of Las Vegas. They all use the same sign company because they all have the same style signs. That's Jeff Purvis doing those lettering. Marlowe's back in her apartment with her roommate, and they're watching TV. It's funny, this is kind of the same setup they had of a TV stand in an earlier issue, but what's missing here is the big hole, unless that's it. Unless that's supposed to be the hole in the side of their apartment. That might be that, and it's just inked so dark it just disappears. So they're watching it on TV, and she sees Joe, and she's like, I can't get away from him. Water park, the water is kind of cooling the ghoul off, kind of slowing him down. So the Hulk decides that's where we're going to go. I'm just going to, keep twisting you and mangling you. They're going to go down some water slides and stuff here. Pretty good choreographed action, I got to say. Good lettering here. I like when he does this kind of 3D lettering and it blends in with the action itself. The gulp, gulp, and the gurgle. He gets pulled down like Luke Skywalker in the trash compactor. And then the ghoul comes out and I guess thinks he's won for half a second before the Hulk emerges again. This one was a weird panel. He's got the lettering blending in with the action again, so it's like part of the page. But the way it like blends into his legs, it creates a weird tangent right there. Back over to Clute and Glorian. We're going to find out a little bit more about him. So Glorian's had enough. He's been thinking that this guy is the shaper of worlds, his creator and master, testing him this whole time, and that the contract he signed was just part of the test. Well, he finds out real quick as he puts his hand on Clute, and Clute starts to grow monstrously big and is like, I am not your shaper of worlds. I am, well, he doesn't really say who he is, but he's like, and I've got you under contract that you signed. And pretty good facial expressions here in this little interaction as we build towards the end of Glorian's arc. Get back to the fighting here, and as they're falling, the Hulk realizes that they're falling into his employer's place, Baron Getty, and crashes into the building. As these chefs too are also talking about how much food Joe Fixit eats, and I guess they're concerned about the cost that it was having. So they crash all the way in through the dining room. I like the triangular panels here. Rip. So what did he do right there? Rip a wing off, maybe? It's hard to say. You just see rip. He ripped something, but he's still getting slashed, and it's burning. Look at the sizzle coming off. Look at his face. Again, another great close up. The detail on those panels, you can tell those are the ones that Purvis really takes a minute to like focus on. Even this one has a pretty good detail on his spine right there. They make their way to the back where they're gonna, well, Baron Getty's guys come in with their guns, like that's gonna do anything at all. And he's like, Baron Getty's guys mean well, but they can't accomplish much. And then we just kind of get a gruesome end to it all. The Hulk's gonna grab him, and at some point he picks up a cleaver right there. I don't know where he picked that up. You don't see it there. Just all of a sudden he's got it in his hand. He picks up a cleaver. Probably could have used like a small panel of him like seeing it laying there, establish it and pick it up, because you don't even see it much there. You kind of see it there. And he backs him into the freezer. And the freezer is cold and making his demonic powers weaken. And the Hulk gets him and slings him on a meat hook. Scrunk. And I guess that's the end of it. And as he's finishing it up, Baron Getty's there and he's like, no problem anymore, Mike. He won't bother you. When he's taken out, make sure he's packed on ice. Good. Joe, yeah, you're fired. Ha 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 ha. And that's a great cliffhanger for the Joe Fixit era, is him being fired right here. It lets you know that this is all coming to a head. And it's interesting for it to happen this way, because in the previous issue, Banner had just kind of worked out a deal with the Hulk, sort of, so that they could keep this life in Vegas, at least for the meantime. And that Banner was going to go work at this radiation place during the day in the Yucca Flats, and the Hulk could, continue being his Las Vegas bouncer self at night. But here it's an issue later and the Hulk is getting fired. So you're kind of like, well, is this the end of the Joe Fixit era, or is that just kind of like a bait and switch to pull you back into the next one? Nice Nintendo ad. I forgot to point out, I think Was Mary Severin? Yeah, Mary Severin was the inker on this one, and I think that paid off. I bet she inked this cover too. But I meant to point that out and, point it out throughout the issue. I do think the inking in this one, kind of like on the last issue on the cover, we had a Bob McLeod doing the inking, and I think it took a little of the rough edge off of Purvis. And I think Mary Severin does a good job of that too, but she doesn't make it so heavy that you lose what is good about Purvis. Now, she has inked a previous issue. I think she did this one a little different. It's almost like she got used to his penciling style. That's it for this one as we, wind up the Joe Fixit era of the Peter David run, but there's still a ton to go for the Peter David era ahead. Until next time, read your comics. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed my breakdown of this issue, you can support the channel by hitting subscribe. It costs you nothing and helps other comic fans find the channel. You can also visit readyourcomics.com for cool merch, like this. Read Your Comics isn't just a brand, it's a mantra. And when you wear a Read Your Comics shirt, you are helping spread the word. For more classic comics conversation, be sure to follow me on Instagram at read.your.comics. And if you're still here, why not watch one of my older videos? Here or here.